Hello and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. My name is Raphie. Today we're going to be doing our second talk about our Discord mystery radio drama we are making in the Roundtable server. So I'm joined here by Shogun, and we're going to go over this. So this is us going over the actual script that we've already made. So in our previous meeting, we went over most of the plot points, and in the meantime, I compiled all of the plot points into a cohesive list in the order I think they should happen. I've added some very subtle things that I feel makes it flow better to follow the light scenes and dark scene ambience, and I have a series of questions as well to fill that in. I think it would be best if I went over the whole plot and to give you a little jog of memory of everything that happens, and then I can start asking questions. Does that sound good?
Yeah, how about, since I narrated the plot in the first podcast as I saw it, why don't you just narrate it back to me based on how you see it, and that way I'll have a second take on it.
Okay. So basically, my character joins the Discord and is welcomed by you in a more than friendly manner, but there's like an ominous overtone. I also had the idea to introduce somebody who's getting gang stalked in the first scene as a way to like introduce Tech's character later on as the MIB agent, which is just a way to retroactively make that fit better. So then I get called by Wandering Library, and then I meet NSA, who introduces me to aliens. I come back after an ET encounter, potentially, and I ask the wrong question. So then Shogun knows I'm onto something. I get detained. I come back to doublespeak and secret phrases, so Twilight speak. So then in an open VC with Twilight speak, there's world building and like tension. And then in the next scene, I meet Ashley, so the honeypot girlfriend, and she tries to get me into a relationship. And then at this point, it becomes a little more obvious that Shogun wants Raphie to sign the eternal contract. And then I end up being alone with NSA, where he starts telling me some of the truth. And then you come in and he shuts up. Oh, and then I say I have an ET experience. And then the MIT stuff with Tech turns out to be true. And then Ashley and Raphie start having real feelings. And then you bring me into a private call to get me on the podcast and rank me up to bring me closer to the cult. And then I end up joining a Doomsday cult meeting. But after asking too many questions in there, I get brought to a private mod chat. I have a lot of questions that I think we got to fill in about this part especially. And then I get called by Ashley, and she like attempts to recruit me right after that. And she's like, look, I've seen what happens to people who don't join. You should join. And I'm like, I got to think about it. I go back to NSA, who tells me not to join and then tells me not to sell out. And then I have a final meeting with you where you basically tell me, you know, what is your answer? You know, you already know I've been like told all this stuff. So you're like, what's your answer to this? Fade to black, fade back to me, introducing a new member, the same as Shogun did in the beginning to show that he's same as Shogun did too. And then I thought there could be like some alien kind of ending with like maybe some CGI or like a little bit of CGI or an effect of something, that there's like a gray alien in my room or something at the very end. That could be cool. So that's basically my return of the plot. So how does that sync up with what you thought about the plot?
I mean, yeah, in broad strokes, that's basically correct. So the story arc is this. We have a protagonist who is Raphie. We have the setting of the film, which is the Roundtable server. We have the antagonist, who ends up being Shogun. We have the main plot, which is the attempt by the group to slowly and subtly bring Raphie into the cult. And then we have the key moral crisis of the plot, which is his deciding whether he accepts or rejects this offer. We have the mentor figure, who is NSA. We have the seductor or temptress, who will be Inspirational Madness. We have the warning, you know, prophet of doom, who is Wandering Library. We have the wild man prophet in the wilderness, who will be Open Eye Project. We'll use a sequence of triads, a triad of triads. So we have 3 scenes of 3, ending in a cycle. And in the long run, Raphie will indeed, after a cliffhanger, accept Shogun's invitation to join the Inner Circle cult. And then the sequence has symmetry, because at the end, it ends with Raphie recruiting the next member in the last scene in exactly the same way that Shogun recruited Raphie in the first scene. So the whole thing is symmetrical. It's structured in 3 sequences of 3. It has in each sequence a lighthearted sequence and a tense or pivotal sequence. which are generally divided between public chats and private chats. So that the public chat is more the lighthearted world building sequence. The private chat is the heavy or crisis of conscience or pivot sequence. But each sequence has an additional edition of where the story goes from the Discord server where the whole film is filmed into the external world. This only happens through the protagonist sharing with the people on the server what has happened to him in his real life. So these will be the more difficult acting sequences where Raphie has to be like, you guys won't believe this, but you were talking about this last night, and I was walking to the store, and the Satanists jumped out of their van with pentagrams around their neck wearing black robes and tried to make me sacrifice a goat. Right? Obviously, it's not going to be that, but that's the point, right? Or I was walking the UFOs, I saw an alien, whatever. And we may find other ways we can work that in. But the point is, we want to try and have a sequence in each set or each phase where it implies that what's occurring on the roundtable server is not just some LARP or some crazy thing. It's actually playing out in the protagonist's life, because that's important for the drama of what's going on. So essentially, that's my idea for it. It's only to provide a structure, and as we go along, we can change it in whatever way we want as we go. But I think it has all that we need to start fleshing out the scenes, writing lines, recruiting cast, and then, you know, we can always change it as we go or edit it as we want.
All right, so we'll get into that stuff after I ask some of these questions, because I think there is some stuff like world building things that we need to go over. So I think a major question, and it's a good place to start, is we need to kind of know what is the cult and what the cult does. So what are the full extents of the cult behind the scenes? What are all the the arms of the round table? What does it do entirely? And we don't have to show all of that, but for us, the writer, to know, and what Shogun knows and what he's actually doing in order to get into his head and show it better. What's going on there?
Well, the only thing I can say is that to me it makes sense, given that I do actually do like the Church of Camelot, and I am actually pretty good at like biblical preaching. I think the cult should be based in Christian theology, because also most cults are, right? Most cults are based in Christian theology. So I think that using the Church of Camelot concept as the basis for me being like a biblical type doomsday cult preacher, whatever, makes sense. But there can also be like a second level to the cult, which is like an inner circle within the server that has anything from connections to intelligence, to connections to law enforcement, to connections to aliens or extraterrestrials or whatever directions we want. And I think the move with that is to reveal as little as possible while suggesting as much as possible. So we want to imply a whole bunch of possibilities and hint at them, but not feel like we need to make anything clear to the audience. Because I think for the audience, much more powerful than saying, oh, it was actually this, is get them guessing. Is it this? They don't know. They just know it's something big, something important, something mysterious, something threatening, something seductive. And all we do is give them hints. But for the most, never let anything be known. So even once you watch the movie, it should be a conspiracy theory documentary, or rather a radio drama, that makes people have conspiracy theories about it, right? I think this is what was going on. No, I think this was. I think it was the aliens. No, I think, remember in Act 1, the intelligence guy? I think he's the one running the server. No, man, it was all the aliens in Act 3. No, it was the Satanists in Act 2, right? So all we want to do is put like a never-ending like presentation of possibilities in front of people. Then we want to have the characters in the server elaborate those possibilities through their video and audio scenes in the server, in the film, right? So NSA has his take, it's the aliens, it's the NSA. OpenEye has his take, no, it's the Satanists, man. They follow me on Discord, right? And so nothing will ever be known, because once you make something known, people can go, oh, that's cheesy, like that's not realistic. But if you never tell them exactly what's going on, they can't find it cheesy. They can only have their own interpretation.
So then what what should we actually show? Because show don't tell, but we're gonna have to tell a lot of stuff. So then, what are we showing when we tell, and what are we not showing?
Well, I mean, again, the sequence of events that happen in private calls when Raphie's character, who you should probably think of a name for from this point on, so we can refer to him by his character's name as we develop the story. It could be Raphie, but yeah, it could be Raphie if you want. Like,
I think we could do our own names. I think that would be good.
I think it's best if we all keep our own names on retrospect.
Yeah.
So it'll be Raphie. So your interactions in the private calls make it clear that something is going on and that a cult exists, right? Because you have Wandering Library calls you and goes, "Hey man, the round table's not what it seems. You know, Shogun's not what he seems. Be careful," and whatever he says, right? So him making that call makes it clear that something's going on. Your interactions with the honeypot girlfriend make it clear that something's going on. Your conversations with NSA make it clear that something's going on. Your conversations with me, Shogun, make it clear that something's going on. And your conversations, yeah. And then when you get pulled into the private chat with the 4 people. So those 5 interactions make it clear to you and the audience that there is some kind of weird cult just from interpolating from the behavior of the characters in reference to you. So that creates the tension, that creates the mystery, and that creates the sense of an antagonist and of menace and of a mystery, right? Now, in addition, you have the 3 interactions of the intelligence agency, the Satanists, and the extraterrestrials. That adds 3 more levels of tension, as well as 3 possible explanations that people can speculate about what's going on with the server, with this story. Then, in addition, you have the world-building conversations with NSA, with OpenEye Project, and with whoever else in the public chats. So all of that creates 3 levels of storytelling, all of which are using implication and innuendo and hinting and metaphor to suggest rather than establish the plot. And then finally, when you're recruited and you join, then it's obvious that yes, you did join some inner circle, and it'll be clear to everybody, okay. And the moral implication will be obvious, etc. Now, what should actually be obvious? You know, again, I really think it works better if we make nothing obvious. The whole thing is a series of mysteries, a series of themes, a series of conspiracy theories, a series of interpretations. Raphie's interpretation, we don't even know what your interpretation is, right? We just sympathize with you as the confused figure trying to figure it out, because the audience is also confused and trying to figure it out, right? That's why they relate to you. You represent the audience trying to figure out the movie, just like you're trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And at the end of the day, it should, in my opinion, it should never be clear what the truth was. Because I can tell you, with the round table, it's never clear what the truth is. You never know. Now, if you wanted to make it definitive, where the cult has certain aspects, I feel like then it becomes more risky of having derivative nature. If you say, oh, it's a Cthulhu cult and they're trying to summon Cthulhu, well, then it becomes kind of kitschy. If you say, okay, well, they were just some religious doomsday cult who believed in, you know, whatever, then it becomes not supernatural enough. If you say it was an alien cult, like, I think we just try and build the air of mystery and intrigue and throw as many possibilities as we can. And the whole point of it is to show there is no one story. Every different member of the server has their own interpretation of what the server is and what reality is. And nobody in the round table has the authority to say what is true or not true. In the same way, the movie should not have one ultimate plot. It should just be a group of people saying different things to the character, and the characters attempt to make sense of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So so there's a thing in writing called like internal conflict and external conflict. And the 3 characters in this movie that we need to know the internal and external conflict is Raphie, Shogun, and the girlfriend. So is Raphie's internal conflict that he's confused and trying to figure out? Like, is that his conflict? And what is his external conflict? The actual act of going deeper and having these experiences? And then what are the internal and external conflicts of your character and the girlfriend character?
Sorry, Raphie. Can you explain that to me again? The internal and external conflicts of me and the girlfriend character?
Yeah. So do you understand what an internal conflict is?
Well,
So
I assume it would mean like within the story.
an internal conflict is within the character. So it's per character is the internal conflict. So each individual character needs to have, it's like a motivation, like it's like a part of their character. So in their internal conflict is what's driving them internally. So somebody might have an external goal, an external like conflict or external motivation of running an ice cream shop and keeping the money going, but they might be doing that because like they have a dead wife and they need something to do. So that's like their internal conflict, their internal motivation. So we should like that's just a really easy way to flesh out characters, and we should have that in a background thought for those three characters especially.
And the internal conflict is an emotional or psychological conflict the character has within themselves, and the external conflict is like a political conflict.
It's more of a physical conflict. So my Raphie's external conflict would be like dealing with actual stuff on the Discord and talking to people. That would all be external conflict. But when he takes it into himself and has like an actual experience with it and like wants to go deeper in this cult, but he's scared, that would be an internal conflict.
Right. Well, and the way I see it, it's mostly the protagonist, Raphie's character, who will be exploring their internal conflicts, because the way I'm understanding the story, to be honest, only the protagonist is the primary character. Every other character plays a part in that character's quote unquote hero's journey, right? So the way I'm understanding this story is in context of Raphie as the protagonist entering the server and entering the story, and the whole thing's narrative arc is based on his experiences. So every character in the story exists in relation to the protagonist, as I suppose is true for most stories.
Well,
I don't see the need to develop each character's primary and secondary conflict, only because to do so would require a longer, something like a series, right, where each of those become like protagonists in their own right.
Well, they already have internal conflicts and external conflicts. Like obviously like the external conflict for the girlfriend's character is something along the lines of they need to get me to, stay around, get me invested, keep me involved. And then their internal conflict might be, am I doing the right thing? Is this guy, should he join? I don't want him to get hurt. So they already have these things, right?
Like, I can elaborate that then. So for the girlfriend character, Inspirational Madness, aka Ashley, her external conflict is trying to serve Shogun and recruit Raphie. That's her goal. Her internal conflict is, ideally, for narrative purposes, we can express that she actually does begin to develop sincere feelings for the protagonist, right? So she herself has genuine, not only artificial feelings for the protagonist, but also, and perhaps even more so because of that, does want to recruit him, because she is recruited already. So she knows she can't have a meaningful relationship with him unless he also joins the cult, right? So in order for that facade to go away, he has to actually do what she wants and join. So she does sincerely want him to join, because then they can actually have an open relationship instead of one under false pretenses. So that's what I would say is her background, ideally. But she wants to play it where she has feelings for me, which would change the narrative in a different way. So whichever way we go with that. But I prefer my narrative. I think it would be unnecessary. Like the only reason, like she wants to be my love interest in the story, but the only narrative reason I can see for that would be to emphasize the point that you were set up and tricked. Right? So at the end, it's like, no, she was my girlfriend and she was just fucking with you. But I don't think that's the vibe we want. I think the vibe we want is when you join the group, you don't look like a rube or a fool for doing so. You just join an inner circle of cool kids who have a nefarious secret alternative agenda, but nobody should know what that is. So it should be left ambiguous who she is, like, etc. But so that's what I'm saying. That would be my internal conflict for her. She tries to corrupt you, but actually has feelings for you. And so in the end, her appeal is sincere rather than artificial. That's how I'd frame that.
Okay, and what about Shogun's internal and external motivations? And like, I think
Well,
this should be rather complicated.
yeah, I was just about to say this gets super meta and intense, and now requires like a whole podcast that would be the most introspective podcast ever. But basically, Shogun's character, by definition, is bipolar, Gemini, dualistic, and conflicted to the extreme, involving a person who is genuinely mad and sincere and passionate in his cult leadership. In other words, he is not leading a predatory cult based on false pretenses, right? This is not a cult like Scientology where L. Ron Hubbard said, oh, the only way to make money is to start a religion. No, this is a person who's actually crazy enough to believe their own hype, right? This is somebody who actually is a true believer in their own messianic cause, in this case, in the script, right? So he is by definition a tortured, conflicted soul who perhaps has good intentions, which perhaps makes it ambiguous whether, like, because we don't want it to be the case that your character joined some evil satanic cult. We just want it to be clear that he joined some kind of inner circle, right? But we don't want it to be clear that that's evil or good, right? The point is only that you joined the inner circle. Whether that's good or bad should be left up for the audience to decide. How you're going to get into Shogun's internal character in the plot of the script, well, to be honest, it would only happen with a scene in which the character has like a public breakdown that shows some kind of schism in his personality.
We should do that.
Perhaps in a moment of great emotion or intoxication or mystical possession, he shows like a dualistic mix of like inspired genius and like, you know, manic possession or something, so that the audience can be confused, just like Hitler giving charismatic speeches or Jim Jones or any other cult leader. People are going to be simultaneously compelled and repelled by it. That's the only way to do it, honestly. And there's no way you can go into like a deep psychoanalysis. All you can do is convey the like dualistic, polarizing nature of it to show why people would believe in this because of the charisma and the intensity of it, but also why people would rebel against or be afraid of it because of its, you know, cult-like or whatever nature. So you could only, again, because we're doing this as a single episode rather than a series, everything has to be evocative, but not descriptive, right? It has to paint a picture, but not give answers. You know what I mean? So it's just experiential journey that each person will interpret differently.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. But we could also do more. It's just this whole plot needs to be put into this single movie. We could do a second one, but it wouldn't be the same story. This is a complete story that we're telling here.
Yeah, that's why my point is like, I don't want to fall into the trap of trying to actually explain these things in the detail that would be required to actually explain them. I'm just trying to think of short sequences that would kind of hint at it. And then people have to do the rest by intuitive jump, right? They have to see what we post or what we make and make a jump of understanding to what we're trying to say. Because in order to do it justice, quote unquote, where it actually explained it, would become this long, drawn out process. What we want to do is just like a series of short scenes with a series of characters and interactions that tells a story, that every part deepens the mystery and the questioning and the theories. No answers are given at any point. You know, not at the beginning, not at the middle, not at the end. There should be no definitive narrative of like, oh, no, he did right or he did wrong. He should have or he shouldn't have, right? It's not like a moral parable. It's like, no, he sold his soul. Neither is it like, yay, he made the right choice. He joined the good guys. It's just like, what did you think happened? Like, was he the good guy or was he lying or was he telling the truth? Which one do you believe, the first guy or the second guy? Right? Was the first guy just lying or was the second guy lying, right? That's what I'd rather have because that's more like how I find the round table. There's never anything clear.
So the scene where your character might break down and show their true colors, would that happen in like the Doomsday cult scene before I get pulled into the private voice chat with Mons?
No, because the Doomsday cult scene is me, or rather my character, at their best, right, in their charismatic oratory stage where people are following along and essentially joining in with this. So later on, after that, you'd want to show the character, show their, instability.
You're lagging a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was saying the scene, so there's a series of scenes with Shogun. The first scene is when he welcomes you to the server. The second scene is when he feels you out, but also tries to recruit you to handle the YouTube channel. The third scene is where he runs the cult meeting and is preaching from the Bible in a charismatic oratory mode. And then the fourth scene is where he breaks down and shows like that he's fraying or that he's volatile or that he's crazy, right? Not completely, but a mix of that with the charismatic part so that you're like, whoa, like he's unstable. Then the fifth scene is when he tries to recruit you and ultimately you are recruited. So the fifth scene must come after the fourth scene where he gives the Church of Camelot thing with an additional sequence between that to separate it. So it's not back to back. A lighthearted. That's what I would see with that.
So there's another aspect to this. So since we have the girlfriend character in the plot, it has to affect Raphie's internal character somehow and change his motivations. So how does that affect my character's motivations and like what become my character's motivations?
I mean, I can only speak to that from my personal perspective, but if a man is attracted to a woman physically and emotionally, she can lead him down any number of paths. And if you're already suffering or rather experiencing peer pressure from the entire group, plus like mentor pressure from the group leader, plus like, you know, psychological religious pressure from ideology, in addition to a female you're attracted to who you also have an emotional connection to. So in other words, how her relate exactly what it's intended to do, right? You're more like you want to connect with her. She's telling you, yeah, we can connect. All you have to do is take this one step and we'll be on the same team. I want you to be on my team. Don't you want to be on my team?
It'd be cool if she like says at the very beginning, like allures to it, like, oh, we could be together, you know, if you would just like, oh, never mind. Like
Exactly. That's the whole point, is just like she's showing you that, hey, because again, what I like best is, again, she's sent to you as a honeypot, right? She doesn't initially have any attraction to you. She doesn't know you. She's being told by me, hey, go act like you like Raphie. But in order for the story to be compelling emotionally, she then develops actual feelings for you and you develop actual feelings for her. So that when she tries to recruit you, she's not just trying to recruit you. She sincerely wants you to join because she wants you to be part of this inner circle. Right. And you sincerely do want to join because A, you like Shogun in some regards, you respect him. 2, you like what the server and what you do for it. 3, you want these advantages. And 4, you like this girl. So therefore it makes perfect sense from a character arc perspective that you're going to ignore people like Wandering Library and even people like NSA and just make a decision where it makes most sense to you.
Do you think there should be a scene where our characters are like, where my character is like, you know, all of this shit is falling apart. I don't know what's real. You know, this happened and these guys are saying this, but like, I know I love you. And she's like, oh my God, like, I don't know how that makes me feel. Like,
you can make it as romantic as you want and as romantic as we can get your acting and hers to be, right? But the point is basically that it starts out as her being sent by the cult to recruit you. You develop feelings for her, she develops feelings for you. That provides an inverted narrative to your feelings and hers. You're starting from opposite sides, but you're experiencing the same internal conflict, right? So for you met her and you're starting to have feelings for her. For her, she was sent to interact with you and she's starting to have feelings for you, blah, blah, blah. So her appeal to you, therefore, is both her mission to recruit you and her personal desire that you should join her team, so to speak. Your decision will be perfectly logical, right? You get the status, you like the server, you want to have the respect of the people, and you like the girl, so you have plenty of reasons. Plus, maybe we can even show you, maybe you just want to know more, right? You've already seen the Satanists, the aliens, and the intelligence agencies, so you want answers too, right? And who else is going to give you answers? So there's plenty of motivations for your character to make these choices. So that makes sense.
yeah. Can we go into more about what happens? You went into it a little bit, but like what happens in the Doomsday cult meeting, and then what happens when I get moved into the private chat with the mods? Because we don't have a lot about that at all.
So the Doomsday cult with the meeting will be based on the Church of Camelot, but it will be a theatrical and sinister version of it. So it will be like a ritualistic, traditional sequence with prayers, hymns, Bible readings, and a sermon. But rather than what I did in the real ones and make them like, sincere, I'll be intentionally trying to make it sinister with very disturbing verses, probably from Revelations, etc. Fire and brimstone, hell and perdition verses, and showing through the interaction of the audience their agreement or participation in this in a way that builds to this like cult-like atmosphere. So this is something hard for me to explain now, but I have a very clear vision of it in my mind and I can easily do it. But it's hard to explain. But it'll be like a song, a prayer, some scripture, a teaching, some scripture, a prayer, and then it'll end. Yeah.
And then I get pulled in, and then like maybe at the very end of that, I start asking crazy questions and like saying stuff, and I get like instantly pulled down to a mod chat.
Not right at the end. So after the church meeting ends, we go into a normal chat. So we go, thank you for being in the Church of Camelot. Let's jump back to the round table. Then you're up there with NSA and others, and then it's a lighthearted sequence. It's a literal exaggerated relief sequence, where in this sequence there's no mystery, there's no tension, there's no conspiracy. It's all just the fun and games of the server. This is the kind of moment that makes you forget that there even is a conspiracy. Everybody's just laughing, and NSA is playing his guitar, people are goofing around, you're having a great time, you're forgetting about all this craziness, right? Then, abruptly, mid-sentence, you get yanked down to the interrogation room. Right.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is there's a short interlude of lightheartedness between the end of the Doomsday call meeting and you getting yanked down. It's not one after the other. It's one happens, you're like, whoa, that was weird. Like, I don't know what to make of that. Then you jump into the chat. You're like, oh, but everyone here is cool. We're chilling. We're joking around. You're like, haha, okay, forget about that. That was just whatever. But then you get pulled down and it's like, hey, we heard you ask questions during the meeting, or maybe after, right? After the church meeting in the room, you're like, yo, NSA, like, what was that like Church of Camelot thing, right? Like, that was kind of weird. Shogun was reading like weird Bible verses and people were acting weird. Like, what was that all about, right? And then you get pulled down like a minute later, right?
What about the Men in Black stuff with Tech?
Well, the thing is, Tech at an earlier point comes into the chat. Everybody is talking. They go quiet, right? And then they start acting like artificial, like they're nervous or like they're on eggshells, right? And then you're like, after he leaves, you're like, whoa, like, why'd everyone start acting weird or whatever? And they go, oh, that's Tech. Don't you know Tech? Like, he created Discord, right? He works for the MI5. It's a whole team of people that work for the intelligence, and they say all the conspiracy theories. And then, so that's basically it. It's just to establish all the conspiracy theories about Tech.
Okay, so what happens when I get pulled into the private mod chat? What's like the start, what's the end, and what happens after?
That basically depends on which 4 people we choose to act those roles. So we just need to identify 4 Knights of the Round Table for that. Because each of them can only act in certain ways. So I just need to know who we can script for that. If it's Ralph, Kasheka, Sign, and Hermes, then I can tell you. If it's, this person, I can tell you, right? Because each of these people can only play certain roles. But the point is each of them is going to represent a different angle of psychological manipulation, intimidation, coercion, and seduction. And each of them is going to consciously employ a different mind control tactic. So you're going to have the threatening, intimidating, scary guy, the friendly, seductive, reassuring good cop, the manipulative, sneaky, whatever person trying to get you to slip up and tell something, and the person who's like cajoling you and telling you you should do such and such or whatever. So again, I can tell you that, but I need to know who the 4 actors are going to be, because each of them represents like a different angle of psychological manipulation in my mind. So, for example, you could have Kasheka effectively in this role, but she could only do this role from one particular angle, which would be to like the good cop, right? Who's like being like super nice and sweet. So you're like inclined to help her, but she is secretly like, you know, leading you along.
So we definitely want Crimson in that scene, right?
I mean, I want Crimson in the film. Where we fit him in, I'm not sure. This is the most obvious place to put him in because it's unscripted so far. But I think he would be good in that scene. Yeah, he would be. He has a way of saying things in a way that kind of does sound a little bit sinister sometimes. So yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be solid. How about what is the Twilight speak? So when my character gets detained, how does he come back, and what is actually being said?
So Twilight speak was explained to me by NSA and others, basically, and basically it refers to cryptographic or encoded esoteric way of speaking, so that you're saying a certain thing which the uninitiated would only hear in a certain way. But if you were initiated and you knew the keywords, you would get a totally different message out of it, right? So this is going to be not an authentic, but just a symbolic explanation of what I mean, right? It wouldn't really sound like this, but this will give you the idea. So let's say me and you are at a party. Everybody's drinking champagne. It's like a fancy boat party. We're sitting out on the patio, and other people are a little ways away. And for whatever reason, I think maybe you're also an initiate. Maybe you're also a Mason, but I'm not sure. So I want to secretly code a message to you to see how you respond, but I don't want to give away that I'm doing so. So I make an apparently benign comment like, twilight is the best time to witness the sunset when the blackbird crows, or some weird shit like that. And then you go, indeed, but the blue water of midday is fine under the seagull's eyes, or some shit like that. Now, the point is, if you didn't know what I was saying, then my message to you would be meaningless. But if your message to me makes sense, then we've now established that we're both initiates. That's called Twilight speak. So it's saying something ambiguous and general enough that normal people would not find it strange, but using code words in that to signal to other initiates that you also are an initiate. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So the point is that they begin speaking in like cryptic, enigmatic, and metaphorical terms, which can be interpreted as either meaningless or mundane, but have a profound esoteric meaning.
So did you say the reason that I get detained in the beginning and the reason that I get moved to the private mod chat near the middle?
Well, the reason you get detained in the beginning is because you've already heard Wandering Library warn you that the server is a cult, that Shogun is not who it seems, and blah, blah, blah. You start asking those questions in a public chat, then you get pulled down. You get pulled down even though, as far as you know, there was no mods in the chat, indicating either that one of the members of the chat told the mods, or the mods are somehow listening even when they're not there, right? So it's not as obvious as the mod was there. He's like, hey, you can't say that. No, you just suddenly moved down, even though like you weren't expecting that. The reason for that is because you were asking questions that you shouldn't be asking. And essentially, it's the same reason in the second case. The difference is in the first case, you just go to the dungeon and go through a basic dungeoning. In the second case, you go into a private mod chat with 4 KOTR, and you get like interrogated. And not just interrogated, but interrogated, threatened, manipulated, and seduced. So it's a sequence of psychological pressures incorporating the primary motivations of fear, appeal to ego, gaslighting, and manipulation, or whatever, right? So each person who speaks to you is going to be exerting a different kind of psychological pressure on you, all of which are compelling, none of which are the same, so that you're stuck in the middle, and you're being simultaneously, hey, you know, if you worked for us, you'd have such and such advantage. Hey, if you go against us, you'll suffer such and such harm. Hey, the reason you're doing this is such and such. We know you better than you know yourself. Hey, we know you're afraid of this. You don't want to do that, blah, 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 whatever.
Sweet. Do you have anything else you want to add while I look for more stuff to ask?
No, I mean, I think it's coming along pretty well, at least in my mind. We can always modify it. Again, it's a morality play. but it's an ambiguous morality play. It's not a black and white thing where there's a clear right and wrong. It's ambiguous, mysterious, multi-layered conspiracy theory through the Discord API as the interface, which will be unique in its own right and interesting. And yeah, I think it has a lot of different things going for it that will work out pretty well.
I've got 2 places we can go. So first off, there was 2 other things, and I also wanted to talk about how we actually want to like film this, how we want to show it on screen, maybe the gang stalking perspective I had. I want to talk about that, but before that, I want to talk about, I think we should include somebody getting gang stalked near the beginning of the movie that like you're talking to, who like maybe like learns some stuff and then shares it, like potentially like one of the characters who like talks to me about MIB shit or something is like that. And
sorry, go ahead.
And then also there was like the fake Shogun thing. What were you saying?
Well, I was just going to say, well, first of all, I don't think the fake Shogun thing fits. It would fit in a longer format, but in this format, I think it would be unnecessarily complex and confusing. So I would suggest we take the fake Shogun aspect out of it for this shorter condensed film, because it's not essential to the story arc. It would just be kind of an additional confusing issue that wouldn't really add anything per se. Unless we tied it back into the intelligence thing, but I feel like there's better ways we could do that. So leaving that aside, the first part though was valid. I do want to include a gang stalking narrative into this. The most obvious way to include the gang stalking narrative is to incorporate it with what Wandering Library says to you. And I think we should extend Wandering Library's sequence to be fairly long, not too long, because we don't want to spoil too much at the beginning. We want it to be mysterious. But he can say, hey, you know, I started asking questions and all of a sudden I started getting gang stalked and this happened and that happened and this happened with my phone. And these people were following me because, as you remember, it ends with, hey, open up. Oh shit, they're here, right? It goes dead. So he's already established that he started asking questions. He started going against the cult, and all of a sudden he started getting gang stalked. And then it ends with, oh my God, they're at my door, I have to go. And then his account gets deleted, right? So I would suggest we include the gang stalking angle as part of Wandering Library's initial warning to you about what's going on. And then secondarily, we reinforce that during NSA's narrative of what he thinks is going on, because he also is aware of the gang stalking.
And thirdly, we reinforce it when I'm like doing exposition on all of the things that have happened to me, and I'm talking to Ashley. So when I'm trying to tell her that.
Yeah. So that gives you 3 sequences with 3 different people in order to elaborate the gang stalking narrative, which I think provides a really good through line for the whole narrative. Yeah, because the different groups, the aliens, the Satanists, and the intelligence agencies, and the server cult itself, all of them are engaged in gang stalking, and all of them are engaged in gaslighting. So if I had to summarize the whole movie that we're making into 3 words, well, 4 words, okay? I'd say conspiracy, mystery, gang stalking, gaslighting. That's the movie, right? It's all about gang stalking and gaslighting. And because it's all about gang stalking and gaslighting, nothing should be clear and everything should be ambiguous, because that's the nature of gang stalking and gaslighting. It's making you question your sanity, question what's going on. So our goal here is not to tell a story where people go, oh my God, can you believe it was that? Our goal is to put people through an experience where they're like, I don't know what's going on, because that's the experience you have when you're getting gang stalked or gaslit, right?
So what are some other through lines that we should do? So the girlfriend through line, the Shogun through line, the mentor through line. How do they weave together? That was another question I had.
Right. Well, one of them is conspiracy and one of them is mystery. So conspiracy is the fact that this is a conspiracy server and every member of the server has their own conspiracy theories. And when you enter the server, you start encountering these people who have these theories that you're not familiar with. So you go through cognitive dissonance. You start questioning your reality. You start reevaluating your experiences in line with what you've heard on the server. So that's one thing we want to capture, where he's like, whoa, I've never thought about flat earth. I've never thought about aliens. I've never thought about Anunnaki or gang stalking or electronic torture. So one aspect is, how many conspiracy theories can we cram into this movie in the form of people talking about them in the voice chats? That's the world building part, right? The world building light sequences are about giving a platform for our members to share their conspiracy theories as the world building aspect of a fictional world. But the audience never knows if these people are right or wrong, lying or telling the truth, crazy or sane, on drugs or sober, right? But it still provides the world building. It's just there's no clear world building, because you never know who's right and who's wrong, just like on the server. Now, secondarily, there's the mystery aspect. That has more to do with the specific world building of the server. So the conspiracy theory aspect world building is the broader world. The mystery world building is within the server, right? Who is in charge? What is it all about? What are their motivations? Are they good or bad? That's the mystery aspect. So you have the conspiracy aspect, the world building, aliens, Satanists, demons, magic, occult, flat earth. Then you have the mystery world building, the server, the cult group, the private chats, the dungeon, Knights of the Round Table. Then you have the gang stalking aspect, the Satanists, the intelligence agencies, the men in black, the aliens. Then you have the, what's the final
girlfriend?
one? No, hold on. Mystery, conspiracy,
Oh, the
gang,
Doomsday cult.
gaslighting. No, it's gaslighting. So the fourth through line is gaslighting, playing with your sanity, social engineering, propaganda, psyops, manipulation, seduction, lies, deception, intimidation, harassment, making you question your sanity. So what we want people to do is emotionally go through the story with the antagonist, where they feel either what he feels or something different, and then either feel, agreement or disagreement, rejoicing or abhorrence at what he decides. That's their emotional investment, as well as being mind blown along with him as he encounters these new ideas. Yeah.
So how three-dimensional are the other characters? Is it kind of like when you're being gang stalked and it seems they're paying attention to you specifically 24/7, or is there inner server politics that's implied but not really went into?
Well, that's the beauty of it, right? Because we're not just using stock characters, we're using fully fleshed out real people like NSA, Wandering Library, Inspirational Madness, Raphie, Shogun. So these characters are as fleshed out as any character could ever be, because it's fucking us, right? So these are not just like stock cartoon characters that you get even in great movies like Alien, right? Alien, the characters are kind of like one-dimensional. Like these are real people, right? So they're going to inherently have more character depth than any scripted character. NSA is a very real person, and ideally we're going to capture his personality in the scripting and in the performance. That's why I want to not do scripted lines. I want to describe to the characters the concept of the scene. I want to describe to them, this is your character and this is the scene. This is your character's motivation. This is what you're trying to do. I have that conversation with NSA. Then I talk to Inspirational Madness. I say, this is your character. This is your motivation. This is the scene. This is what you want to do. And I do that for each character in the scene, and then have them run it as a role play. Now, this will be difficult, and it will take way more time, and it'll be way more complicated. But if it actually works, it's going to be 100 times better, because instead of just having them reading the lines, they're going to be actually consciously playing the role of their character and trying to accomplish the goal that they want. And that's going to result in gold that we could never have written, but it's also going to result in a bunch of crap. So we're going to have to do it like multiple times. But if we can actually get them to navigate these scenes as we would character playing Game World of Darkness, in other words, actually buying into what's going on and putting themselves in the shoes of their character and trying to use their own personal perspective to navigate these situations according to the goals we've given them, then it won't even seem like a movie. It's going to seem like real life, or at least like some kind of really unique, captured role-playing game. It's going to be really compelling.
So, yeah, let's talk more about filming. So before I throw any of my ideas in, I want most of your ideas about how you think we should actually film it and what we should show on screen, how it should flow together editing wise. Like, what do you think about that? Because I have some ideas.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I've been talking, you've been asking great questions. So if you want to get my ideas and then go with yours, that's perfect.
Yeah. So, what do you think should be the main thing the audience sees, like on screen? Should it be Discord? Should it be my webcam? Should it be a mix of both? Should it be a gang stalker perspective? Should it be other people's screens? Like,
I think the majority of it, if not all of it, and probably all of it, should be through the perspective of your character. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and say it, 100% of it is always from the perspective of your character.
that'll be good to isolate.
It's never going to be from anyone else's perspective. And the perspective will be exactly and only what you would experience logging onto Discord and having an experience on the round table. So your experience on the round table is either public voice chats like this one, private voice calls where you leave the public chat to have a private call, video chats publicly, video chats privately, and text chats, right? And we can incorporate all of that. You can have scenes where it shows the text chats. You can have scenes where it's a video, scenes where it's voice, scenes where it's private call, but it's only ever from the perspective of the protagonist, never anybody else. And it's never anything but what would occur within Discord API or UI or whatever you call it, interface.
Yeah. I think there should be at least a couple shots while Raphie is being get gang stalked, intelligence agency and stuff that are under the filter of like that gang stalking kind of matrix perspective that I sent you. Do you agree?
Well, yes, because in order for you to have moments where you're having these external encounters with aliens, Satanists, or intelligence agencies, there has to be parts where you're away from the chat, right? Just like when I was getting gang stalked, when you and I were talking, you know, I left the chat for a while and I wasn't talking. And then all of a sudden I came back and was like, holy shit, you won't believe what that guy just said to me, right? Oh, you're not who they say you are. Are you still doing your training? Blah, 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 right? So there has to be moments, at least a few, but only a few, like maybe three, rule of three always works, where you are not actively engaging in the chat and the chat is going on without you. The purpose of that is basically only so that you can come back in and say, holy shit, you won't believe what just happened while I wasn't talking. But during the period of time when you have to be gone for narrative reasons, we use that to do the world building through the conspiracy discourse of the people who are there while you're gone.
So it could be cool if it's like I leave the chat, right? And then I see like we see somebody else like leave the chat, like everyone leaves the chat, and then it's like my phone's camera, and then it's like my phone's screen, like slowly things are being like infiltrated and slowly they're like getting updated, and then suddenly you see like both cameras on my phone, and like suddenly you get like my steps, and then like you're like watching more and more, and then like all this stuff happens, and then I come back to the Discord, and then it's like back to a normal perspective, and it's just like the audience is just like, what? Like that they have that? Like what does that mean? Like
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's basically it. And I think if you have anything else you want to ask me, go ahead. Otherwise, if you have any further thoughts or ideas, go ahead.
Let's just talk back and forth about some practicalities, like just some simple things. Like where would we want to start this like what would be the first scene we want to film? Do we want to film it in sequential order? Do you want me to edit it? Like some more practical stuff, and like the people involved, like what would the schedules be like? Like since we want to try to like get this thing started, like, and the next step is really like getting people to get to know their characters and stuff like that. Like what's the next step there?
Well, again, tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central, I've scheduled a server meeting. The server meeting is for multiple purposes, but one of the purposes will be to begin casting. So we already know in concept what characters we need for major speaking roles. We'll also need multiple characters for quote unquote extra roles, because we're going to be filming like voice chat. So it's not just going to be the 2 or 3 people that'll be talking. There has to be like 10 or more people in the chat to make it look like it's, happening in an active chat. So we're going to have 2 categories of actors and extras, right? Just like any film, I used to be an extra. Yeah. And in this case, the extras might not have to say a single word. They just have to be in the voice chat and fill up the room, right? But we don't want to use bots. We want real members to do that. Now, second,
Sure,
so,
but I can edit that. That's fairly easy.
well, sure, fine. But the point is, we need people to volunteer to voice act the roles of the speaking roles, which will be somewhere between 10. I don't imagine it would be 20. Probably about 10 people voice roles, maybe 20. Somewhere between 10 and 20 people will have voice roles. Everyone else will be an extra if we even need extras. Regardless, that will be the casting part. Now, scripting, we can do scripting. I just recommend that scripting remain like suggestion rather than like rule. So you like give them a script, but like they can change it if they want. But if they don't have any ideas, they can follow the script.
So I think our next meeting on this, after the server meeting, we should get like as many cast members as we can, you and me, and we'll start talking about legitimate scenes. And I think the work I'll do next is like compiling the actual order of the scenes and what happens every scene. So we'll start talking about the actual scenes next and what we want to do in them. And then it will be pretty close to filming.
Yeah, I think we're moving ahead extremely fast. I think we have a lot of synergy, you and I creatively, as well as the server with the content itself, as well as the community with the acting roles. So I think it's a great idea. It's very doable. It's not going to cost us anything. We have everything we need to do it. The plot's there, director's there, cast is there, script is there. So yeah, all we got to do is like, basically, if you as director want to do some work with this, break down the scenes that I laid out, in my opinion, and write suggestions of the actual dialogue, right? You know what I mean? Like who actually will say what, right? Because you have the idea of it, but you could try if you want. You don't have to even, but you could try and write like, Ashley says this, Raphie says that, Ashley says this, Raphie says that, or Shogun says this, Raphie says that, or Wandering Library says this, and then you have lines. The reason for that is some people, like, are not going to be able to just make it up. Some people are, but some people aren't. So for the people who aren't able to just make shit up, they should have at least guidelines. Like, for example, with all respect, like Inspirational Madness probably going to need some lines, Whereas other people like NSA are probably going to be able to make it up if you just give them their character. So for those who can make it up if you just give them their character, I think that's going to be a lot better. For those who don't necessarily have that like creative intuition of doing that, we want to give them lines they can just follow. At least so they have a guideline to like work off.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. I think this is a good enough place to call it. For now, for at least for recording, this is a perfect place.
Yeah, thank you. That was another good session. That's 2 good podcasts. If anyone heard this and is interested, please go back and listen to the last one. It's an RT podcast channel, brainstorming for this new movie. And please come to the server meeting tomorrow at 4 if you can. We'll talk about this.
We should open it up to a discussion. We should see if anyone has anything to say before we end it.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone have any comments, suggestions, criticisms? All right. Well, great. Thanks for having me.
How many characters in total do you think there's going to be?
Probably 15 at least.
Cool.
Yeah, I'd say probably 15 voiced roles. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's think. So Shogun, Raphie, Ashley, Wandering Library, NSA, OpenEye, then Crimson, 3 other mods. That's 10 already. So yeah.
Yeah, and then 5 who are added for other story purposes who we don't necessarily know yet. but there'll have to be multiple people who just speak in the voice chats and say like less important things to give the impression that it's like other conversation going on, not just the story. So we're going to need, it might honestly end up being like 25, but like 10 of these will just be people who have like one line that doesn't really mean anything, but they just have to say something. So it's not like so contrived that everything only always has to do with this character, right? Because like we want this story to emerge in relation to this character, but it has to take place in a world where he's not the only thing going on and other shit is going on that's not pertaining to him. So we're going to need a bunch of people to just say like semi-random shit, but there's no point in putting random shit in the movie. So even the random shit should still be interesting and like server relevant and conspiracy relevant. So we're going to want a whole bunch of people to give like one-liners.
Can you end the movie with a post-apocalypse zombie? Zombie post-apocalypse?
Not exactly, no.
Or I think we're going to end it with an alien gotcha.
Well, I think in my vision, we end it with like, you know, your character joining the cult. It's ambiguous, but this opens up like a whole new chapter and then recruiting the new member as like a cliffhanger of like, oh my God, it's starting again. That's how I envision it ending. I don't really see us tying in like a huge event like an alien apocalypse or alien invasion. It's just like all these different things were real. They all came into play and the character made this choice and now it's all going on and nobody still knows exactly what happened, but now they want to know, right? And that opens us up for a sequel or a series.
Like Hermes could probably 3D render us a spaceship, like a spaceship that we could like zoom out of into the sky and like see it fly away or something at the very end of the movie.
Well, it'd be good if we could have a video scene. So instead of just Raphie coming back and saying, "Oh my God, you guys, I saw a UFO," it'd be way better if he could be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm out at the lake with Iris and we're camping and we're seeing a UFO," and then you're on video, and then he CG renders, you know, a UFO sighting as video, right? That you're showing and filming, because we've had that happen on the roundtable. We've had people live stream UFO encounters onto the video chat. So if we could put something like that in there, that would be cool.
That would be cool. Anyone else have anything today to say? Shonatello, you have any ideas?
I'm actually gonna go back and listen to what you guys said before I came in. I missed out a little bit there. And once I formulate any questions, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we can end it there. I think that was very productive. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the Roundtable Podcast YouTube channel. Check out the links in our descriptions for all our other YouTube channels and go and hit that subscribe button and the like button on every single thing on all of them and buy all of our merch, please. But after that, join the Roundtable Discord where we do these crazy fun events every day with all of these amazing members. Thank you, Shogun. Thank you, myself. Thank you to the live audience. We can hop up to the Roundtable voice chat now.
Thank you, Raphie. Thank you, everybody. Excellent. Davis, you're too late, bro. We're going to the Roundtable chat, bro.